Yeah, so my background is in artificial intelligence. Once I was into the crypto space, I got very interested in looking at DEXs and AMMs and DeFi in general. And that's where we sort of developed this optimal routing solution that turned into the Odos product. People don't know enough about DEXs and DEX aggregation enough to really differentiate from DEXs. And so there's a huge amount to be gained when you can look at all the DEXs and find the best price via one DEX or oftentimes even a combination of DEXs. You can find ways to extract value in places other people aren't looking, and that makes the barrier to entry much, much lower. All that being said, I do think there's a lot of value to that this optimal routing can bring to MEV extraction, and that's probably something we'll be looking into more. So my name is Matt. I work at Odos. I lead the smart contracts and algorithms for our smart order routing and other DeFi aggregation platform. Yeah, so our goal at a high level is to aggregate all of DeFi, right? So we find all of the DEXs, all of the lending platforms, all the CDPs, really everything. And right now our primary thing is finding out how to convert one token to another in the optimal way. So basically that means getting the highest value of output token net of gas. People don't know enough about DEXs and DEX aggregation enough to really differentiate from DEXs. The large majority of volume, maybe 70, maybe even 80% of volume still goes through individual DEXs. And so there's a huge amount to be gained when you can look at all the DEXs and find the best price via one DEX or oftentimes even a combination of DEXs. I mentioned this in the panel, but one of the interesting things about finding the optimal route is that you eliminate backrunning potential within the domain you're optimally routing through. The important point is that it doesn't apply to other domains, right? So centralized exchanges or other chains, you can still backrun against those. And so I think increasingly we're going to be looking into how we can access that liquidity as well, which right now is extremely hard because that makes the user experience much worse when these different chains and domains are not communicating at all. It's not really possible to access their liquidity in a way that still makes the route and user experience acceptable. So that's going to be a very interesting field to see develop. So one thing we built is an arbitrage tracker. It was originally built during a hackathon in 2021. It was mentioned in Vitalik's blog on MEV, cross-domain MEV. And then we did a bit more work to expand it across more chains, basically a larger search space of arbitrage. And basically what it does is it looks across all these DEXs on all these chains and it tries to find an arbitrage path split between all these chains that extracts value, right? Of course, as arbitrage does. The problem is right now to execute that on that, you need funds on all these chains, and you need to execute them basically at the same time independently. So you can get partial execution and there's a lot of risks there. It looks closer to sort of traditional statistical arbitrage than single domain MEV extraction. There's a very high bar on the opportunities that are known about. So you sort of have two options. Either you can dive super deep into those and try to find some edge there, or you can try to find sort of long tail opportunities, right? So that's really the most promising, I think, sort of area for people to look into, especially if you have deep knowledge in some other area of crypto. You can find ways to extract value in places other people aren't looking, and that makes the barrier to entry much, much lower. Because these very common types of MEV become mostly just gas optimization at a certain point. You're just trying to write everything in low-level assembly code to use as little gas as possible and barely outbid the next competitor and extract that little bit of margin. So the long tail is really where a lot of the lower bar to entry is.
Can you explain long tail for people?
Absolutely. So it sort of refers to a distribution of, you could say, participants or attention where there's a few categories of MEV, so arbitrage, liquidating positions, even now MEV arbitrage or NFT arbitrage. that are all sort of known, and people tackle them in lots of ways and spend time. But there's other protocols that people don't look at in an MEV context. And so there are ways to extract value from those that no one really knows about, and then you can break in that way instead of trying to compete in this ultra competitive space. Yeah, it's really hard to look out over that long of a time frame. I think it's hard to say even much about the next year. I think perhaps one of the biggest bounds that will happen over that time is in UX. So right now we try to find the best swap for a user, and we succeed in that category, but there's still a lot of issues with execution, right? We talked about MEV obviously is the major theme, and although we can sort of extract any back running value within a domain and give it to the user via optimal routing, there is still a risk of sandwiching or any sort of other front running. And that's something that you really can't protect against without compromising on UX in some way right now. So improving in that category is going to be pretty huge, and it's going to take some time, I think. And the other one, as I said, is arbitraging across domains. That's probably going to take even more time because there's so many challenges and sort of cross-chain communication and coordination you need to improve in that area. Absolutely, yeah. So we have, I think, a unique edge, and this is why we got into the space in the beginning. We figured out a way to route in a way and search a larger search space than the competitors seem to be able to search, and that allows us to find better rates. A big limiting factor is, again, the set of liquidity you're actually considering routing through. And so continually being quick to integrate the new DEXs and DeFi platforms is going to be, I think, key to maintaining that edge, because that's something we've seen the competitors sort of not do as often once they have a market share. They don't spend as many resources keeping up with this liquidity set, and that can compromise rates quite severely. I think optimal routing has a much bigger edge when you're not competing for gas, because it's really in that complexity that you can find sort of an edge over the competition or over anyone else who's doing trading, right? And so MEV often comes down to optimizing output per gas unit rather than output minus gas cost. So it is a bit of a different game, and that you have to take that into account. All that being said, I do think there's a lot of value to that this optimal routing can bring to MEV extraction, and that's probably something we'll be looking into more. Yeah, so my background is in artificial intelligence. So I originally got into blockchain working on the graph. So there's a parent company of Odos called Semiotic Labs, and they are core developers for the graph, working on artificial intelligence and cryptography solutions. So I was working on artificial intelligence agents to be used within their protocol to optimize the various actors. So that was kind of my entry. Once I was into the crypto space, I got very interested in looking at DEXs and AMMs and DeFi in general. And that's where we sort of developed this optimal routing solution that turned into the Odos product.